Shaggy, say hi. Literally hid. So today I wanted to just make a little video on me and my experience with taking my health coaching certification exam through ACE, because I think that something like this would have been really helpful for me when I took my exam or when I was about to take my exam, so I kind of had a better idea of what I was doing going into it and kind of having a better plan. I did kind of like look into it a little bit further into my studying, but I think starting out it would have been nice to kind of get a good idea of like what the whole process was. So I kind of just want to talk about that, talk about what I did to study, and like some of the resources that I used for my ACE coaching exam, and really some important areas to focus on too, and kind of what I'm doing now that I've passed my exam. So I purchased the ACE Health and Wellness Coaching Program in July. It's now February, so it's been 8 or 9 months. And didn't really get started with it until September because I was really busy over the summer with coaching and traveling with cheerleading camps. So I didn't get to spend as much time as I'd wanted to over, once I had gotten that program. But once I was back and kind of focused again, I just kind of got into it and actually ended up getting a job as a health coach for a weight loss company that I work for right now, and ended up moving out to Phoenix so that I could do that. But as I was doing that, I was still studying for my exam so I could pass and kind of have that certification for myself. And the job that I have now is great for being able to really gain that experience of that one-on-one coaching with people, and learning from them and kind of what it is that they want and what it is that they need out of a coach. So this is the textbook that I got. So this is the textbook, and then this is the study companion that comes with it. So basically what I would do is read each chapter. I also got the program with the online videos and that part of the studying. So I was able to go in and also kind of like watch the lecture videos. And then after that, I went back into my notes and I wrote down in my iPad kind of like the important things and ended up writing so many notes. I really don't think it's necessary to do all of this, but that's just kind of like the learner that I am. So I need to read it, and then I think I physically need to write it in order for it to kind of like sink into my brain. So I would go back in, write what I thought was kind of important based on what was mentioned in the book a lot, and also in the videos. I would then go and take my practice quiz that it has in the workbook or the study companion, and I would actually even go back in and write like why I thought that question was right and why the other questions are wrong. And I think that's a key part too about the learning, is why is this question wrong, or maybe not necessarily wrong, because I think that's like a big part of it too, is that a lot of the questions are correct in a way, but there's always questions about like which one's best or most accurate. So that's why it's important for you to kind of understand why you chose one over the other, and writing it in your workbook is really helpful. And then I would go back in and I would also take the quizzes that are on the online study portion and then move on to the next chapter. So I would typically do about like one chapter a week, which I think was pretty good. Every now and then I would kind of like miss a week or do 2 weeks at a time. So wasn't too strict about like a schedule of how I was doing it. But I ended up doing it. So after watching all the videos, taking my notes, reading the book, I went back into like the online study portion, and I took their practice test, which was about 60 questions. There's 2 of them. I took the first one, and then I kind of focused on just the questions that I mainly got wrong. I passed the first practice one, so it made me feel a lot more confident. I didn't really like study for that one specifically, but I just kind of wanted to get like a baseline of where I was so I could figure out what I needed to study. So that was really helpful. Went back in and kind of just went through my notes and like read them again and made sure that like I was really able to understand it. And I think the key thing too is also to be able to like explain it to people. So it's one thing to like write it down and kind of like memorize it, but you also need to be able to explain it. So I would kind of even just like pretend like I was, coaching somebody on it, or like as I was coaching actual people, I would really be applying like what I was learning. One of the other things that I did was use a study guide that I had gotten from a business coach who is also a health coach, and she is working with health coaches to like create their own business. So her name's Emily Woods, and I can put the study guide in the description below if you're interested, because I think that was really helpful, just to kind of weed out like all the stuff that isn't going to be on the test, because it was developed by a bunch of coaches who had recently taken their test, so they knew exactly what was going to be on your test. So that was really helpful. And then she had, all the calculations and stuff that you need, because there are calculations, but not as much as I feel like as people think. So I did that. And then I didn't really make any flashcards, but except for things like body fat percentage, diabetes diagnoses, dyslipidemia, cholesterol levels, waist-hip ratio levels, or at-risk levels. So that was really all I did, just because I knew that there would be questions on those. And then I went back in and I took that second practice test along with taking or redoing all of the questions from that workbook. So that way I could really make sure that I was familiar with how ACE asks questions and just in general what the test was going to be. So I passed all those, so I felt confident going into it, and I think that helped. So I took my test. It took me about 2.5 hours. But there was nothing really on the exam that I felt like I had absolutely no idea. There was just a couple of weird questions, but nothing that I was like, I don't remember this at all. I ended up scoring 597 out of 800, and you need a 500 to pass, so not the greatest score, but I passed, so I don't care. A lot of the questions are like best or most, so some of the answers are going to be technically correct, but you want to make sure that you're thinking as an ACE health coach, or as ACE wants you to think, and picking the best or the most accurate answer. So that's why I think going into the study companion or any questions and when you're studying and really trying to be detailed about why you chose that question over others is helpful. The other thing too to think about is when you're taking the exam, a lot of the answers might say things like create, design, implement, and you don't want to pick those ones. ACE doesn't want you to do any of that type of stuff. As a health coach, they want you to co-create, to discuss, to explore. So really look at the terminology that's being used for those answers, because that might make a difference too. So one thing could say to design an exercise program. The other ones could say to co-create an exercise program. They're both technically doing the same thing, but co-creating is technically the right answer. The other thing too is questions or answers using person-first language. So you wouldn't say a diabetic or a obese patient or something like that. You would say a client with diabetes or a client with obesity, and using that first-person language. So at the end of my exam, it kind of broke down what the 4 domains were as far as the bigger topics. So, and it broke down the percentage as far as what I got correct. So I got 80% of the questions correct for coaching behavior change. And I think the key to that whole domain is just being confident in knowing the stage of behavior change that your client is in. So if they're in the pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, or maintenance stage, and being able to know based on their stage what you would then do to, reach their goals. And that kind of also ties into the types of motivation too. So depending on what motivates them to do something or to reach their goal, how would you coach them through that? Are they intrinsically motivated? Is it extrinsically motivated? Integrated, identified, all that. Identifying cognitive distortion. So that all or nothing mentality, the minimizing and the maximizing, and really being able to identify what type of cognitive distortion it is based on what their response is. So if they were to say, I always do a weight loss program, but I always get my weight back, that would be an all or nothing mentality. And how to and then the next part that kind of ties into that too is the cognitive restructuring. So how would you address something like that and make sure that they kind of change their mentality to being more of a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset? The next domain was conducting assessments and developing plans, and I got 88% of those questions correct. So there was a lot more focus on exercise than I thought there was going to be, and I think that's just because ACE is primarily a fitness program. They do personal training and all that, and group training. So I think that's kind of why they put a lot of those questions in. So kind of just be mindful of that and how you would go about exercise, and really know the difference between when you should make a referral and when it's appropriate for you to design something with your client. And that's the key too, is with your client, not for them. And, when you're making a referral, it's based on, what their conditions are, signs or symptoms, if they currently have cardiovascular disease or anything like that, and how to use those assessment forms. So the PAR-HQ9, the PAR-HQ9, the PAR-Q Plus, and the perceived stress scale. So using a lot of those assessments to figure out how to move forward with whatever plan they have. That's kind of too where all those questions about waist hip ratio, body fat percentage, and everything like that kind of come in. So they would give you an example of this person has a body fat percentage of this amount, what risk category at the end. So that was helpful for when I was, studying and doing the flashcards for those questions. And I'm glad that I memorized those. The next domain was implementing and adjusting individualized plans. And I got 77% of those questions right. So that is really, for that, it was really important to know what stage that they're in so that you know how to implement their plan. So somebody in an action stage and a maintenance stage are technically, doing the same thing and working towards their goals, but you're going to coach them very differently. Maintenance, you're going to be focusing on preventing lapses or anything like that. Whereas in an action phase, you're going to make sure that they're focusing on consistency and that they have social support and all that. And focusing a lot on self-efficacy and resilience. So this is also where those calculations come in as far as trying to figure out what kind of calorie deficit they need to be in if they want to lose X amount of pounds in X amount of weeks. So there are questions like that, not a lot, but that's where those calculations would come in, or calculating lean mass based on, or lean desired mass based on their current body weight or their desired body weight. So the last domain was professional conduct and legal responsibilities, and I got 90% of those questions right. And that was really about common sense, I feel like. So when it might be appropriate to have somebody sign a waiver and all that. So I would highly recommend using like a study guide, and I can link the one that I used below just because I think that one was really helpful. But kind of do your own research. I think YouTube was great for me as far as being able to see other people, and that's why I'm making this video, so that way other people can see like how I went through it and what helped me and what didn't, and kind of like what my end result was. But overall, I felt like I was prepared. I wasn't overly prepared, but like I also know what I'm doing. Like I have been doing this for months now, and I mean I still have a lot to learn, but as far as like being tested on it, like I felt confident. So now that I passed my exam and I'm certified health and wellness coach, and I have more credibility on top of my bachelor's degree in nutrition, I'm still working as a health coach for the weight loss company that I've been with for the past few months, but I'm wanting to kind of take my coaching in a different direction. I think with the company that I have, my scope of practice is just limited a little bit more, because we do develop meal plans for them that are also developed with registered dietitians. So we're just kind of coaching them through that. So as long as they're following the meal plan, we can coach them. But if they're not following it, then we can't coach them, which is challenging. But I kind of want to focus on like wellness as a whole and help people who just are like done with diet culture and want to have a better relationship with food. And I think that is ultimately like the most sustainable way to not only lose weight if that's what you're looking for, but also to prevent ever having to get to a point where you have to seek out a weight loss program like the one that I work for right now. So kind of like even a preventative method for that. So really helping people to have like a better relationship with food and focusing on mindful eating, especially. I think that's something that like we just don't do as a society. Like all of our cues for hunger and for eating are based on our environment, not as much on relying on our body and our body signals. So that's kind of what I want to help people do and focus on nourishing rather than restricting. And then I think too, a lot of the reason that we tend to have a negative relationship with food is because of stress or our emotions. So if we can figure out how those emotions cause us to eat or do certain things or do certain activities or not do activities, then that's how we're able to kind of figure out, okay, knowing that this emotion might be an issue for us, how do we find better strategies that are healthier and are ultimately going to make us healthier? So really tying in a lot of like positive psychology and cognitive restructuring and, helping you to just kind of like fall in love with the process of being a healthier version of yourself. So I'm still trying to like figure out and like target that niche that I want to work with, because I think that that's going to be the key thing to be able to like market myself and be able to like present myself as an expert that can help you. So after I took my exam, like I was excited, like I'd been working really hard to get here, and like I passed, and like so much weight was just like lifted off my shoulder now that I can really like just have more opportunities in general to like take this where I want. And then later on in that week, I just like felt so overwhelmed with all the things that I wanted to do, and kind of feeling like I'm basically kind of like starting from scratch and I don't know what I'm doing. But I think we kind of need to normalize that, and I think that that's something that I try to like convey or help my clients understand, is like everyone has to start somewhere. We need to like normalize that. So I'm trying to take my own advice and just, go with what it is that I want to do, because I want to help people and ultimately like help them have a better relationship with food. And I think that like the fear of failure definitely like kind of holds me back a little bit, but honestly, like just everyone has to start somewhere. So that's what I'm trying to do. So, and I think too, just trying to get away from that like idea of perfectionism and shame, and really just trying to fall in love with the process of, being a better version of yourself and being a better version of yourself than you were the day before. And each day, like doing your best, like really asking yourself each day, am I doing my best? That might be different every day, but every day you should be doing your best. So as far as like developing my business, there's a couple things that I've already kind of started to do, but still very early. And I think it's kind of hard because I feel like I am doing a lot of it on my own and I don't know what I'm doing. So it makes it harder for me to be able to like kind of like get this off the ground and like get started with something that like I want to do. Like I have absolutely I have so much motivation to do this. It's just like I don't know where to start almost, but I'm just going with it. So that's why I'm, coming back and, making more YouTube videos, starting my own Instagram, and really trying to like network with a lot of people. So other health coaches. And I think that's like the next part about being out here in Phoenix, is I feel like I have more opportunities out here, but if I were back home in Yuma, I would probably have more support, just because Yuma is a lot more of like a local, just a small, tight-knit local community that supports one another. So that's kind of just what I did as I was going through my studying, as I was getting ready to take my exam, and then now that I'm done and taking my exam, if you're thinking about becoming a health coach and you're trying to figure out like what program to go with, I would definitely recommend the ACE program. I think it's like just a very well-rounded program, and it focuses a lot on just that one-on-one coaching, especially, and also it focuses a lot on developing your coaching skills and making you feel confident in being able to help people and not feeling like you have to have the right answers. And I think that's also, one of the key things, is that you're working with them and really identifying that the patient or the client is the expert of their own life, and you're just there to help support them in making those behavior changes. So really like letting the clients take the lead with that, but being there with your knowledge and with your experience to help them get there, and providing that accountability, but also helping them to ultimately be accountable to themselves. So now that I'm done with all that, I think I just kind of want to start focusing more on like social media, especially. And I think that's why I'm like, doing YouTube videos and having my own Instagram account. So that's Coach Adrian _ if you want to follow that. And then I am also kind of like thinking about even having a podcast, because I really like to talk about coaching and kind of like what I think about it and how to help you to have a better relationship with food, and get away from diet culture, and just have more trust in yourself and your body, and really helping you to get to that end result of being happy, being the happiest and healthiest version of yourself. So yeah, if you're about to take your exam, good luck. Hopefully this was helpful, or if you're thinking about joining the ACE program, hopefully that was kind of helpful to just to kind of see like what you would be tested on and what all the studying would be. So yeah, thanks.